Good day. Welcome back to Sample Genie Season 9 with myself, Phaction. I hope you're all well and smashing the tunes. Today we're going to be looking at remixes, and we're going to do that by exploring how I tend to approach them, what I look for in stems, and how to take elements from an original track and give them a new lease of life, you know, whilst adding my own signature sound to the mix. And I really enjoy remixes because they give you so much to work with and get inspired by, and they're just a lot of fun. So we'll structure today's session by first playing the original track, which you can hear in the background. If you guys know, you probably recognize this one. It's from a certain album by Rhea and Colette. And yeah, so we'll be exploring the stems given to us here, identifying which parts are particularly inspiring or useful to create a potential backbone of the remix. And I'll then show you how I layer, arrange and process the stems before exploring how I add my own elements to get sort of gelled into the original vibe. And the goal with remixes for me generally is simply to strike that balance between familiarity and freshness. You know, you don't want to diverge so far from the original that you can't recognize it, but you also want to have your own stamp on it. And yeah, sometimes I like to keep things pure, liquid and melodic. Other times I go a bit heavier and darker, depending on, you know, how I'm feeling and what I think is going to fit and feel cohesive with the stems. And yeah, sometimes labels ask me to request a particular vibe for the remix, which I think is cool. Sometimes they've got like a track of mine from the past that they want that kind of vibe from it. And other times it's completely free reign. So either way, it's a lot of fun and often pretty educational, really, to work with, you know, art created by someone else. They often have ideas that you would never have. So, you know, working with stems just gives you more and more inspiration for your own work. So yeah, the track we're going to use today is called Carnelian by my homies Rhea, Colette. Big ups to them too. And it's been produced by Coherent, Luke and Josh. Big ups to all of you for making such a lovely original track. And if you haven't heard their album, Two Sides of Everything, head on over to Spotify to hear it. And yeah, I've been really on it with the remixes lately, and I've got quite a few collecting in the unreleased folder. And but this remix in particular, I enjoyed a lot because, you know, it's by people that are close to my heart and people that inspire me every day. So I hope you enjoy the tutorial. Let's dive in. So first we're going to literally play out this whole track, and we're going to see the individual stem layers, and then we're going to talk about, you know, what sort of sticks out and what might be a good starting point, essentially. So let's do that now.
Gift of a rejection, I'm still in will show up in this world until I open up my heart to love to feel. Things will show up in this world until I bridge the connection I build. Better than the great discovery, seeking out some opportunity. Better than the great discovery, you're showing vulnerability. Showing your vulnerability, yeah. Showing your vulnerability, yeah. Showing your vulnerability, yeah. Yeah, oh, to stand in new territories, yeah. A willingness to measure, a readiness for pleasure, to go with the mysteries, yeah. Things will show up in this world until I open up my heart to love to feel. Things will show up in this world until I bridge the connection I build. Better than the great discovery, seeking out some opportunity. Better than the great discovery, you're showing vulnerability. Showing your vulnerability. Showing your vulnerability, yeah. Showing your vulnerability, yeah, oh.
All right, wicked. Lovely track. Cool. So let's get into it. All right. So I've done the track, done the remix, and I'm going to show you that now so you can get a picture of what it's like. And what I've also done is saved the stages of the process of making it, the phases of development as I developed it. So we can run through each phase of development separately, and you can see from start to finish my thought process. But, you know, to give you an idea of where the whole tutorial is heading, and the result we're heading for, I'm going to play the remix now.
Easy. rejection. Still in progress, and that's not meaningless. I know I'll always be moving towards all my dreams. Better than the great discovery, seeking out some opportunity. Better than the great discovery, you're showing your vulnerability. Yeah, showing your vulnerability.
And so, yeah, next steps are to literally take you back to stage 1. And we're going to begin that by going right back to my stem review. So, as you can see here, I've highlighted all the bits. Let's bring that down. Highlighted all the bits that I found to be inspiring or useful or potential for being used in the remix. So I'll run through it real quick because we've got a lot to cover, and I want to keep things concise as concise as I can. So first element that really stuck out to me that I wanted to use was this one, and this one here. Just really like that element. Thought I'd start with that, and I thought there's 2 versions of that here, the upper register and the lower one. So I layered that one down here and created a slightly bigger dimension in that layer. I thought, yeah, that's brilliant as a backbone to create the intro. And sometimes I build remixes out from the intro, sometimes I build them out from the drop. But essentially, it's more about kind of catching the vibe for me. You know, it's really important to get the essence of the tune right. So I started with those elements. Other elements worth noting, pads like that, little paddy elements here. Thought, yeah, I can reprocess those. This thing, I've yet to actually use that one, but we probably will later down the line. And then I like to go out and highlight the vocals that stand out too. So in particular, as you could hear on the intro,
Go with the mysteries.
I really like this one, this bit here. So yeah. Also highlighted harmony.
Go with the mysteries.
For use later on in the tune. And I like the verses.
Died inside, then I realized.
I like that one by Rhea, and I like this one by Colette as well. This is like, for me, the main crux of the tune. So
vulnerability, yeah. Showing your vulnerability, yeah. Showing your vulnerability, willingness to measure.
And these bits are most likely used later on for the second drop of the tune.
Great discovery is seeking out some opportunity.
That's great. That's really good.
Great discovery is seeking out some opportunity. Greater than the great discovery is showing vulnerability.
Cool. So other bits worth looking at include flute over here. Nice little sample there. Piano. Little clips from the piano, like offcuts from reverb tails. Like those. And what else? FX. So I've reprocessed those. And we can see kind of how I've done that. Hats, didn't really use much of the drums. I've never really liked to do that with remixes. I think you want to bring your own drums to the mix and bass to the mix. So I have actually used the intro. In the intro, the original bass I used from their stems and reprocessed those subtly. And then brought my own bass in for the drop. And did that mainly just to keep that familiarity. You know, make it feel like this is the tune, but it's not the tune. So make it that balance of familiarity and freshness. So especially when it comes to the drop, you know, make people feel like this is they can recognize the tune, they know what tune it is, but when it comes to the drop, boom, give them something else. So, and yeah, I really like those nice gnarly saw waves. I think they're saw waves. Nicely distorted and filtered. Great for the intro. And yeah, that's essentially all the bits that I really liked. There's other bits in there, and I could probably use more, but I like to keep things simple and distill a track down so that I can use it and simplify it, and so that it sends the message of the tune across more directly. You know, before the drop, or it depends what I'm doing. You know, this is more of a story of a tune that sort of elapses over the course of the track, and my remix is more of a give you the story at the start, intro, build, boom, drop, and then reintroduce elements later down the line. So the first thing I did, this was like literally my first stages. And this is what the loop was sounding like as I got it going. So let's loop this. So yeah, I just liked that part of the vocal. Sounds like easy, but actually it's part of the whole word.
Go with the Mr. Easy.
Which I thought was cool. Just slightly more ambiguous, and then when that responds with
Easy, Mr. Easy.
So you can kind of complete the actual phrasing on the turnaround of each 16. And I like to loop clips. If you know my music, then you'll know that I love to have hooks and looping vocals. I think it's very catchy and it captures people's attention and reels them in. It kind of creates an earworm for the listener. You know, it creates something that people can't forget. That's just a staple of electronic music, you know, repetition versus a variation. So, yep, done that. So that was kind of my first stages. And what I did with the processing on this is I you'll see it on my next stage, is I sort of first of all layered these with the original length of these layers here. So the lower register combined with the higher register, and then it goes a note down. And I think that just creates a super cool vibe. And yeah, introduce the bass as the intro. And then I started to identify like what I want to do with the vocals, like, you know, really picked out the ones that I wanted to send the message of the tune across. And that indeed was the rear vocal.
Died inside, then I realized the floor imperfection, the gift of a rejection. I'm still in progress, and that's not meaningless.
Which, you know, I really liked that verse. I love the message in this tune. I think it's very powerful. And I love the juxtapose and contrast between Ria and Colette's lyrics and voice. I think it's great. So what I felt was missing from, or at least what it needed for a remix, was to jazz up the processing a bit on the vocals and just give everything a little bit more spacey, wet, verbed out feel. It's just tend to be what I do in my projects anyway, is get like a nice vibe. Pads, whether that's, you know, Atmos, reverb, delay, chorus, all of those techniques kind of combine to create more of a washed out feeling. So once I'd got this kind of like inspirational loop going, essentially, I moved on into my processing and started to jazz everything up. So we go from here to here. Much more vibey, and everything feels a little bit more organic. I quite liked the dry sound on the original because it felt more old school, but this feels a little bit more like futuristic for some reason. When you start using chorus, things start sounding more futuristic in my head, at least. So yeah, let's break it all down and, you know, look at what processing I would do to essentially give all this more atmosphere. So first thing is the driver synth. So the main thing I did with that is some fairly aggressive EQing. I pushed up the mid-range information and also the mono information in it. And I did that so that when I press my mono button, I did that to make it really prominent in the mid-range, because I figured my drums are going to sit on top. They're going to be quite nice, pristine, you know, drums. I'm going to have all my hats and stuff going on there. And I want to make sure that people can hear that this is the driver element rolling the tune along. So I boosted my mid signal and my mono signal, reduced a bit of the width, took out a lot of the top end. And that really gave it a bit more presence, I think, in the mix. And then sort of went a little bit heavy on it and sort of would then add another EQ and just took it out again. Just to, because it was quite thick around that area. Just to give it, get back a little bit more precision and gel it into the mix a bit better. And then next is piano. So chopped out those little bumps from the tail of the piano. I thought that was really quite dramatic, even though it's just a little piano note. It sounded really cool. Just adds a bit of drama to the mix. And then turnarounds. So I layered, as highlighted in the stems. I took out some of the piano from the pure piano that wasn't processed and layered it underneath the wet piano. So you get a bit more body and power underneath that. And I used those as turnarounds as per the original, because I wanted to make sure that there was that familiarity, you know, that like this is what the turnarounds happen in the original tune, and this is what it's going to do in the remix too. But you know, otherwise it's going to just sound too disjointed and too far away from the original. So vocals. So they're sounding really, really far away from the dry sound that they were before. And I've done that. I love doing all this processing on vocals. I think it's kind of like it's integral to my process and writing tunes always. I don't always go that spacey, but this tune I felt it required it, and it felt right for the vibe. So essentially, let's look at it step by step. And also I'll just comment on some of the arrangement a little bit. I'm starting to carve out the idea, and part, you know, this is literally how I did it. Like step, you know, on a timeline, it's how I arrange things. So I was doing arrangement, I was doing processing as I went along, because they go hand in hand. So I love doing little bits like that, subtle things, percussive things, incidental sounds, as I'd call them, that loop and just add something, you know, like add something against the lyrical content. Otherwise it's just a bit bland without these peculiar little ad libs, you know. I think at least from my perspective, that's just my style of working with vocals. I like having little like peculiar stuff in there. Processing. Let's turn the whole group off. There you go. So I used a chorus. It's like multi-grouped, so I kind of worked progressively out. Put a wash reverb over that one. I did it in parallel and made it quite quiet and EQ'd that signal to really control the tonality of it. If we just hear it on its own. So that gave it a real ethereal feel. 100% wet on the verb, and then blend it in with the dry. And then chorus. I go quite subtle with my choruses. Again, parallel always. Just sounds better. Has way better mono capability. Just put it back into mono now. Just chorus on its own sounds terrible in mono, and if you put it to 50%, still, you know, you lose gain for some reason or something. You lose power when you chorus something. So always put the dry in underneath, and blend it in. And yeah, the general group processing is my go-to virtual mix rack setup. quite a lot of saturation. You know about virtual mix rack by now. A lot of producers are using it. Lots of saturation, boosting, EQ boosting, just to give the whole thing more body. So I'll just turn it off so you can hear it. Just more brightness and more thickness. Done that by the revival shimmer, adding a bit of top end, adding a bit of low weight, and then high lift, low lift, some air. Just went mental with it, to be honest, but within reason. And then if needs be, which is what I did later on, just a slight bit of dipping, just to make sure it's not overly harsh. And the brighter you go, as there's a threshold, you go too bright and you start to have a lot of problems because your tune starts to hurt the ears. You don't want to turn it up as loud. It starts to clip up in the top end quicker. And so you got to be always mindful of that and making sure that everything fits together and there's not too much brightness summing in your tune. So these are about on the limit of how bright I was happy with, really. I tend to go quite bright with my tune mix down. So yeah, so I was happy with that. So this one's adding, it's fully low cut down to the bottom and it's only low mix, but it's adding a sort of body and wash again on top of the whole group. And then once I add the next chorus, so there's two, and sometimes it's specifically to that track and then another chorus on the group to glue it all together. All of this stuff is gluing as well as making it sound sort of sexier. Much spacier. And then ozone was used to moderate the width, to just make it not so wide in the mid lows, essentially. Just subtle reduction in width. This thing, I don't think it's doing anything. Nope. So I can go. And then, yeah, so all that verse as well, arrangement wise, I did a few little subtle things. Yeah. Yeah. So I had a nice little touch there by alternating between the and the O, between Colette and Rhea. I thought that was cool. That's a nice little turnaround as well. Sounds great. A little bit sort of edgier compared to the original straightforward singing, alternating between verses. I thought, yeah, let's do something different. Otherwise, keeping fairly faithful to the arrangement and the message of the tune. I kind of wanted to do that because I like the message of the tune. You know, it's I don't really want to rearrange the lyrical content that much. Sometimes when I'm feeling more adventurous, I might go cut things up and process them and do some wacky stuff. But I like to try and stay faithful to the message of the original. In generally speaking. I'm still in progress, and that's not meaningless. I know I'll always be moving towards all my dreams. Yeah. Cool, and you can hear some nice little effects in the background. So I took the effects from the original stem down here and combined it with my own samples. And yeah, just I like to build out effects as I go along, and introduce that kind of drama. The intro had to sound good to a point, essentially, for me to want to proceed. And then once I've kind of got that, I'll start adding drums. I'll start building my drums from either from scratch, or I'll chuck in breaks that I've made before, or I might chuck in breaks from packs and just see what kind of beat pattern might work with this, and just see what where I can take it. But more often than not, it will be ground up and sort of starting with a kick. So we're going to explore that next. And then I'll sort of talk a little bit more about the effects as well. Intro bass. Just a subtle bit of exciter to give it a little bit more body in the middle and upper frequency, and a bit of trash as well, to just to give it more presence, essentially, and then sub underneath it as is. And then the next thing I did was add in my atmosphere. And to get that, I took the pads that were given and re-pitched them and reprocessed them a little bit. So took that. I thought, what can I do? Sometimes the pads, you know, I love making pads. Got loads in my library, loads from the synth. But I thought this time I'm going to see what I can fashion out of the existing stems. So step one, pitch down 5 semitones, keep it unwarped. I like the new harmonics that you get when you unwarp and pitch down. Everything moves slower. The whole wave evolves slower. It's not just a pitch down job, it's changing the timing of everything too. So it can really flip a sound. And then when you add processing too, and the right kind of filtering, you can take a sound that was, you know, you can just really bring it into another frequency range and give it a new vibe. And now, you know, now the direction of the tune is heading towards slightly more deep, murkier, darker territory, which sets it up nicely for the bass. And as I say above, you know, bringing those piano bits in at the ends of sections to keep things relevant to the original. Like so. A few more pad layers here. Whoop. Or just the one here, which I've basically pitched, took the original, given it some width, changed the image of it, and EQ'd it and pitched it down a whole octave. Just giving it that underwater feeling. Yep, I added some of the flutes in. I tried to get them on the intro, but because I was also using quite a lot of vocals, I found that it clashed a lot, which is a bit of a decision point at that stage, because I was like, do I have the flute on the intro? Maybe save it. So that's what I've done, saved it for later on in the tune, and can potentially feature more on the second drop. But what I did there was use just tail ends of it and loop them and fade them in, just to give a bit of extra vibe. Cool. And yeah, I might as well go talk about the effects now. So I've put them in another group, which we're going to talk about later on in the development stage, because there's this group here called staccato strings, and you hear that on the intro when I played the whole remix. We're going to talk about that later because I added it in later, and I want to follow faithfully the whole process of how I think, So just to summarize, I've created like a vibe soup intro basically that was my mission. And then I was like, okay, now I've got the vibes, I've got the effects in place, now I can build drums around it, because sometimes you need like context to build all that stuff around, and you need to know where it's going to know what you're going to put with it. So that's often my process, is just looping stuff, reprocessing it, reframing it, rearranging it, cutting it, trying a few little tricks to rearrange and just reframe everything. Effects. Wow, quite a lot of cutting there. Hold on. Wrong track. Yeah, just use some of my really frequently used effects, but made it more subtle in the background. I'm likely going to add some more white noise through lift effects as well, because I feel like it probably needs it. The tune I said is done. I'd say more accurately, it's like about 80% there, because I've still got to write the second drop, and I'm going to switch things up for that. But also I'm just reflecting and going, before I actually, send this off for pre-master, just check whether there's any other effects I can add. I think the main thing I would add is some risers, subtle white noise, sidechain possibly, to give extra flow into sections and more energy. So, but for the meantime, I used the Carnelian FX stem and layered it with my percussive stem. And that was mainly for beat matching purposes as well. I like to kind of make sure that there is a percussive element. You've got the driver unit, like the driver samples playing, the musical bits playing in the background, but then I find that's not always enough for real DJ ability. So more Foley here. And processing wise, I like to use quite a lot of timeless. It really kind of adds life to static sounds and brings continuity into your intro and makes everything feel more organic. So that's what I'm always reaching for, some sort of delay and EQing, reverb. And all of this is under some more processing here, which is chorus, and again more delay, so it all kind of glues together and feels spacey. So yeah, chorus there, taking a lot of the mids out, and yeah, more delay there. Extra bass that I use to supplement the Reese that they've got in the stems for the intro. So sample just grabbed out of pack somewhere for the little bomb bumps, and then combined with one of my own samples, eerie harmonics. And that just adds a bit of percussive groove. And then this is repeated. I decide to use the sort of like subby bits later on in the tune, because I thought they're quite rhythmic, and they add just a little subtle extra bit of groove to the bass. Wicked. All right, let's move swiftly on into drum creation.